Okay, today is November 23rd. Thank you so much. It's a Monday night. It's a holiday week, so really appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy days and your busy holiday planning schedules to join us for another Zoom meeting relative to the IPOs about Butler and Bessie. And the reason that I titled this "Say No to the Grants and Protect Our Roads" is because we were inundated the Sunday prior to the last town council meeting um, you know, from letters, emails, calls, texts, where there was a lot of apprehension about the revised IPOs from the first iteration to the next and then to the next. And then during the meeting that day, we wanted to make sure that everybody understands, why things change, how things change. There's nothing that's, non-transparent or, being pushed through without any review from town council, stuff like that. So I want to go over some of those myths and, some of those, the reasons why things change at the last minute. But first things first, and again, these are going to be statements. They're not going to be questions. But we've listened. Again, when people speak out, we want to make sure that we hear them and we make sure that we not only listen to them, it's not just them venting, but we actually incorporate it to what we're going to be doing with whether it's the town roads, whether it's the town's trees, whether it's development, whether it's something that's going to impact us now or in the future. We always have listened and we always try to adapt as we listen. And again, this is a statement. The dirt roads will be maintained. Town residents and town council and staff understand the importance of the dirt roads and are making the town of Windermere unique and charming. And it's for these reasons the town council directed staff to maintain the dirt roadways in the town of Windermere. And then the road widths will be maintained in the town of Windermere. Again, that's a statement. That is not a question or a what if. The town residents have reached out to both elected officials and staff, and we've again listened, and the residents want the roads to be maintain the existing widths and not to be widened. Again, we've heard you, we've amended and adapted. So the proposal for consideration by town council on December 8th at 6 p.m. is to do just that. No roads will be widened in that proposal. Now, when I say no roads will be widened, there may be some opportunities where we can actually reduce the width in some areas to hopefully lessen the impacts to the neighboring or adjoining properties. We don't want to get less than a certain diameter because we don't want to start, moving the needle as far as getting closer and closer to guidelines that we've talked about before. But I think that we do have some capabilities and some leeway because this is our design on how we want it to look and how we want to do it. Where we can reduce some of those widths. So what is the balance? And this is always the big sticker. When the decision was made that we wanted to maintain the dirt roadways, the direction was also to maintain the stormwater runoff from those roadways, to also add utilities to protect the lakes, reduce the amount of impacts as much as possible and not take away from the charm and character of the town. And also, I would add on there too, is to keep in mind the reduction of cut-through traffic. So how do we balance all of those things when we're trying to, again, do something that is, hard to do? This is an arduous task that the town staff's been directed to achieve. But as you'll see, we have a plan. And again, first things first, we need to establish a maintenance plan on what we have. Again, that's the biggest thing that we've heard from residents and elected officials is, well, if we're not maintaining what we have right now, then why would we even focus on doing any major projects in the future? So we're going to be looking at reestablishing swale systems. We're going to train public works on the means and methods of maintaining not only dirt roads, but also the ancillary stormwater systems. Hopefully, when we have a new hire that's coming in for the new public works director position, they'll have a lot more experience when it comes to both stormwater systems and dirt roadways, NPDES. And then based upon whatever the negotiations as to the salary of that person, hopefully we'll be able to free up some funds where we can actually maybe hire a full-time stormwater employee that would work with that plan, and all day, 40 hours a week, they'd be working on the stormwater systems, making sure they're clean, making sure they're clear, making sure that they are operating as they were intended. So the next thing is to do is to establish a capital improvements plan based on council direction, which includes only those guidelines that are set and established by the town and their elected officials. Meaning that we're not going to be following any of the Green Book standards. We're not going to be following any formal standards. It's going to be the standards that we as, town residents, as elected officials, and as staff come up with in order to maintain those systems. And then based upon those guidelines that we set forth, seek out funding that falls in line with the guidance of the residents and council, and then to revise the assessment to not only maintain what we have, but to plan for projects in the future. When I say revise the assessment, it all depends on funds. The reason that we go out for these grants is to help bridge that gap from projects that are maybe, $200,000 over $1 million. Right now, again, with the assessment, we receive about $225,000 a year in assessment, and we pretty much dedicate about $135,000 to $150,000 of that to actual stormwater projects. The balance of that goes to vacuuming out some of the systems, shell and rock purchase, all sorts of stuff. But our goal is not to increase the assessments, but to try to leverage and utilize other funding sources, whether it be federal, state, or local, to hopefully offset that cost for some of these big ticket items. And so the questions that we had at the last town council meeting, and I apologize, I'm trying to be administrator and moderator at the same time, so I'm having to let people in and move people around. But the biggest thing is that's the difference between working between a private sector and a public sector. In the private sector, changes can be made on daily or hourly notice. The items can be discussed and decision makers, right away. You can have those people all in one room, and it doesn't have to be advertised. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to wait a certain amount of time, 48 hours, because as we know, a lot of things can change within 48 hours based on meetings, based on additional information. So again, we're not the private sector or the public sector. So whatever we do, we have to make sure that we put it in an agenda, we notice it, we have to give town council sufficient time to review it. And during that time, again, instead of doing it that day, things change between when we submit something on Thursday and then the Monday or Tuesday, when actually town council does do their decisions. So again, that's the biggest difference on why things change. It's not for anything nefarious. They can only be brought up at town council meetings or also be in violation of the sunshine. And we can't tell other council members, what other things that council members have told us, because we would be an intermediary. So we try to make sure that whatever thoughts or comments are made, we provide those to the council members all at the same time, as far as, any amendments or any addendums that need to be made based upon, the stuff that we hear from the residents. So what's happening or what's been going on with these projects? I know we've been talking about these for several months now. So initially town council directed us, or Kimley Horn Associates, to come up with concepts to correct the stormwater issues in the areas. Not only a concept to help with the stormwater, but one that would be able to be implemented throughout the town, meaning that we would come up with a typical section and then use that throughout the town, and it would include both paving and dirt road options. The town council then made the decision to move forward maintaining dirt road systems. And the reason that paving the roadways came up during that first concept was because that's the easiest way to maintain the stormwater, and also the would be utilizing the least amount of right-of-way as possible if we were to go with the paving. But town council again understood, that it's the character and the charm, and we are different than any other community in Central Florida, and probably from, in Florida for that fact. But again, we wanted to come up with some plans on how to maintain those dirt roads. So then we went around for our second round, and the second round of concepts submitted and discussed by Town Council was, the amount of right-of-way to utilize and maintain the dirt roadways. The concept demonstrated pretty much the use of all, if not most, of the town's right-of-way. And then the council made the decision to revise the concept to make sure that staff was utilizing the concept at least amount of impacts as possible. Should that have been presented first as far as the one with the least amount of impact as possible? Absolutely. And, staff will take the blame on that one. But again, it's trying to reduce that, concept from, just looking at the forest and getting closer and closer to the trees, because remember, we're still at concept level, we're not actually at design level. So what happened with these proposals and these projects? The third concept that we came up with, and we worked with Kimberly Hart Associates, included the minimum Green Book standards for the roadways, as well as general engineering guidelines. The minimum standards were pretty much, you have to have a grass shoulder, which is 3 feet. Then you need 9-foot travel lanes, which is part of not only the Green Book standards, but our own standards, for us. If we were to approve any new development or anything like that, we would make sure that we adopt 9-foot travel lanes, which if you're going to have a two-way roadway, it would be 18 feet. And then for a utility corridor, people always ask us, why do you need 6 feet? That 6 feet is mandated by Orange County Utilities. If they don't have that 6 feet, they will not approve. So we would have to either negotiate with them or give valid reasons of why we need that 6 foot reduced. And then the grass swales, again, based upon the hydraulics, they were not conservative, but they came back with a maximum area of 14 foot wide. Again, when people saw the 14 foot wide, they believe that that is the minimums and that's what's going to be put in there. Again, we're at concept levels, so that would have been the maximum. Just imagine if I told you that, hey, listen, the maximum is 14 feet, and then we come back and say, oh, by the way, it's going to be 18 feet. So we want to make sure that we had correct information on what the potential impacts would be to what people perceive as their front yards. We're very conscious of that and respectful of that. And we didn't want to have to come back and say, sorry, we were wrong, and we need to, utilize more of that property. So why was it so important to go ahead and maintain those minimum standards in those concepts? Based on the hazard mitigation grant program, those are the 3 grants that the town was awarded. The town signed contracts stating that the town would design. This would ensure grant funding for both design and construction. And to give you some of the costs of what we're looking at here is Butler Basin HMGP funding. Just for the design alone, we would be reimbursed $82,000, and for the construction up to $700,000. And for the Bessie Basin HMGP design, $90,000, with construction up to $1.1 million. These are federal grants, so we would have to come up with 25% share, which would be about $500,000. And we would utilize the stormwater assessments to offset that cost, either through a loan or for payments, depending upon how long these projects go. Once we hit certain deliverables through the contract, we're able to get the reimbursements. So it's not like we're going to be cash poor if we start doing these things, because once the deliverable is met, you're refunded for that money. And hopefully, we would be able to get it within that fiscal year. So what happened with the latest IPOs that were presented to Town Council in November? Well, the latest IPO, that we came up with as what we would deem the hybrid, because when you looked at the IPOs that were presented, both IPO 118 and 119, for the Butler Basin, you had pretty much, we're going to meet standards. And the reason why we had that as meet standards, that was direction of Town Council. So we kept it pretty much exactly the way that it was, and that would give us pretty much 100% that FEMA would go ahead and fund the project, because if we're using the standards, then they wouldn't have anything to rebuke or to refuse when it came to the actual design, nor would they have anything to refuse when it came to the actual construction cost itself. However, when we took a look at the Bessie Basin, we decided to go ahead and just maintain that as a stormwater project, not as a incorporate the road on that. So, but again, based on the amount of feedback, from the residents, it didn't matter if it was from Butler, from Bessie, they wanted to keep the existing dirt roadways the same width that they want. And so again, we thought about how would we negotiate or how would we work with, FEMA, Department of Emergency Management, whoever we're going to have to work with, if we're not going to make any, if we're not going to be adhering to any of these Green Book standards. And so what we brainstormed was with Mr. Galora, who did our previous HMGP grants and has a lot of experience with HMGP grants. Our thought is, these are stormwater projects, nothing to do with roadways. So our argument, and we have cases in the past that we've been awarded HMGP projects and refunds, or not refunds, but reimbursements for those projects that were basically stormwater. And we didn't have to widen the roadways. We didn't have to maintain Green Book standards. We just had to design to make sure that the stormwater was going to an area to where the people would be able to leave their homes, or emergency vehicles were able to get to their homes. So with what we're doing with the hybrid thing is we're going to go ahead and hire Mike Galora as a peer review. Second here. He's going to be working with staff because he has worked with staff and previously on obtaining these grants, and he was the face as it relates to the town, not only with the existing HMGP grants, but also with the awarded and ones that were funded in the past. Prior to Kimley Horn Associates coming on board, myself and Mr. Galora worked with Orange County on their local mitigation strategy plan in the hopes that if something did happen, we would be able to go ahead and get these HMGP grants. So for the last 2 to 3 years, Mike and I have been working with, Jason Taylor and some of the people from Orange County on getting these projects in an area where they'd be able to be funded. And, we want to make sure that that synergy and that transit there, and there would be no transition, that they're still talking to the same person. That's the purpose of the peer review. And the IPO is broken out too. That's going to be in the town council packet, where the town can stop at any time with the design, should FEMA not approve the funding. So we can stop after the design. We don't have to work on construction bidding. We don't have to work on construction costs or anything like that. Once the design is done, we'll submit it to FEMA and see what they say. If they deny it, so be it. We can go ahead and create a CIP after that. But it also ensures that the design will be reviewed by not only town council, but you as residents. Will be doing these, throughout the entire design process. So the first deliverable would be at 45% completion of the actual design. So we'd be almost halfway there, getting your thoughts, getting your feeling on, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, so on and so forth. So when you see those 14-foot swales, it could be reduced to 7-8 feet, or we can amend, those areas to maybe do some piping. And then the intent of the design is, for these two IPOs, in order for us to create a capital improvements program or to actually fix it, I know a lot of people talk about Band-Aids and stuff like that, but we'd like to figure out what the cure is going to be for these two areas. So whether or not FEMA's involved, we still need designs on how to cure these basins. So it's not like the money that we're going to be spending is money not well worth spent. So if we were to move forward with the design, which the IPOs call for, and which we are able to a la carte it, we'll be able to go ahead and price out certain sections and certain phases to make sure that, people's houses aren't getting flooded. If we do A, how will that affect, D? So we'll be able to, try to phase these things out as we can afford it. But again, a design is going to help us take care of that entire basin itself. So general questions as it relates to the concepts that we continuously hear. But when you see the concepts that we're about to propose tonight, is, once we get to the design, then we can do a lot of variations. Again, these are concepts. This is the trees. It's not the actual, the tree itself. I mean, it's the forest. It's not the tree. Sorry. And there are certain examples here. The road width on Butler, it expands past the 18 feet. I think, in some areas like 21 feet. We could possibly reduce that impact to the east and the west by reducing it to that 18 feet. The 14-foot swales that are shown, the max, is there, and we can reduce them with through the design. Also, we can take into account maybe consideration of piping. We'll take a look at through design whether that's feasible, and then also what the cost is going to be, for not only construction but perpetual maintenance. And again, as I said before, you guys are going to be through this every step of the way. We'll be doing door knockers. We're going to be, advertising these to everybody to have comments and questions at the 45% and at the 100%. So at no time, will there be any surprises? You'll know exactly what town council is looking at and why they're looking at it. So what's on the agenda for December 8th? What are they going to be talking about as far as the IPOs that are going to be presented? So town council will review the individual project orders. I should have probably explained that for both the Butler and Bessie basins. Each item is not connected to each other. As you know, we have that third one that's out there, which is West 2nd Avenue. So there's 3 separate contracts, 3 separate projects. The town council can accept both, they can deny both, or they can accept one or the other. Each IPO is split by task item, and the town council can choose which tasks to approve and which ones to postpone based upon the responses of FEMA or availability of funds. If approved, the designs will come back to town council at 45% and 100% design to include additional input from the residents and town council. The designs will not proceed unless an approval of town council is made. Additional meetings will be held with those as this one with the residents. So we don't move forward towards 100% unless we get past that 45% hurdle. If approved, and this is talking about the 100% design, town council will go ahead or town staff will go ahead and submit these designs to FEMA. So FEMA, through the Department of Emergency Management, will review the project upon the completion of the design plans. This is where our argument will be as far as for them to fund and not only the design, but also the construction. Their approval relies on the flood mitigation as intended and stated in the scope of work. The hydraulic and the hydraulic analysis, H&H, that is provided as part of the project deliverables to DEM under the contract, project conditions and requirements. The H&H study shall contain at least 3 scenarios where losses are identified under pre and post mitigation conditions. The design shall also demonstrate mitigated effectiveness showing the physical locations and elevations of infrastructure that are being damaged. If denied, again, the town council has the option to proceed without the grant funds and self-fund these projects, on our own. But again, those designs would still be 100% designs, and we can shelve them until we have that self-funding. But if approved, and then FEMA designs, again, as I said, we can create our own CIP. If FEMA approves the designs, then the projects will be bid out for construction based upon the design agreed upon by town council and residents. So everything that we saw within those emails that were sent to us was, we don't want to widen our roads. We want to maintain the dirt roads. We want to maintain the charm and the look and the character of the town. And we pretty much don't want anybody telling us how to do it. And that's what you're getting with these 2 IPOs. Those IPOs are posted in the agenda packet, which is online right now. If you want us to email them to you, just go ahead and contact myself or Diane Edwards, and we'll send it directly to you, those 2 IPOs. But again, it's based on everything that we've heard over the last 3 to 4 months, and based on everything that we've read over the last 3 to 4 months, that you want your voices not only to be heard, but incorporated in the process. We're unique, we're different. And, you know, if that means that we can't get some grants and maybe open to get other grants based on our own guidelines, then so be it. But that is our goal. We need a design anyway. So go ahead and move forward with the design. And then if we fail at FEMA review, then we still haven't lost out on anything because we have designs for those basins. Now the Butler Basin concept, if you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at it, it has changed significantly. And again, this is based on comments from the neighbors and from additional site visits. Again, people say, why do these concepts keep changing? The concepts keep changing because additional information is coming to us that would have probably came out during design, and we would have probably made the same amendments once we got closer to design. But this is what we'll continue to do in revisions of concepts and designs once we get additional information. So right here, you would see that we would look at a guttering or a piping system in order to get the stormwater to this area, and then this area would go to the retention area. We also included now actual Fernwood Park, so that you would have a retention area in the centerpiece, retention area to the southeast, and also some retention area up here. We're going to have to do some stabilization of the actual area over here. And what that'll do is, this is right here, the hard point to where, you know, when we get heavy rains, it comes down here, accelerates, and then we typically get a lot of stormwater, or not stormwater, but runoff into directly the lake from here. So again, we would create a system to where it would be going into this retention area, and this retention area. And then this will be angled towards this retention area, or not retention area, but the swale systems. Yeah, one question too is, I know another hot button for a lot of people that live on Butler is discussions relative to the boardwalk that's down here. Parks and Recreation, a lot of you were at that meeting, has made the determination to hold off on the boardwalk until we actually work on the design of the stormwater project for Fernwood Park. They didn't want to interfere with anything, and they didn't want to have to tear down anything. So we'll be working together with Parks and Recreation and the neighbors to come up with some either compromise or some type of different look out here that not only takes care of the stormwater, but makes whatever improvements that Parks and Recreation and the surrounding residents come up with. And as you can see, you know, this is a planned dry retention area that we're going to be putting in landscaping and vegetation. So that helps, you know, when it perks down, it'll help the, you know, clean up the water and then get into its final destination, which is the actual lake itself. For the portion from Main Street down 7th, you know, a couple of changes here as well. A lot of the swale systems we're looking at placing is going to be on the north side, which is the town side, and then still maintain another retention area on the east side of Forest, a smaller retention area on the west side of Forest, which should be connected by a system. And then we're actually looking at piping from here all the way up to, I think the Stroops are on as well, to over here, which is getting closer and closer to Fernwood Park. And again, as it says, a proposed swale and sodding of 14 feet. But again, as we get closer, hopefully that'll be reduced. And if I zoom in a little bit, hopefully this will work. The existing swale systems are here anyway. When you go out there, you can see that there's a culvert underneath here, and there's existing swale systems. Again, we'll be looking at doing slopes to where it won't look and feel like a swale, but it'll actually look like a front yard. And right now there is a deep swale that's over there. And so it'll be just enhancing the look and making it look a lot better. But again, you can see the 3-foot shoulders. That's the only impact to the south. Then you have a 3-foot shoulder and then a swale system up here and down here. The Bessie Basin concept, again, concept level. You have the swale systems coming from Main Street down 9th. That would be to the north. And then utilizing a lot of area that already has existing swale systems. So we'd be doing a 2%, which would be pushing everything to the north. And then we've extended, we don't have concepts right now, but the IPO is going to include expanding the scope of what we look at. And hopefully we'll be able to get, if we were to design, when we do design it, if FEMA, if we have monies available, then, FEMA does tend to, or DEM, meaning that if we're under budget and we get these projects done, they like to see us use that money for other projects as well. Where will the culvert be on the intersection of 9th and Oakdale? Right now, I'd have to leave that up to Hal, but let me get through the presentation and then we'll come back to this slide.
Yep. Robert, just an FYI, the culverts were inadvertently turned off on this exhibit. So I have a more updated one that I can share, but just with the culverts shown. It's the exact same thing, but this one just didn't have the culverts shown.
Yeah, so it'd still be across here.
Correct. And I can show that after you're done.
Okay. So, when we get on, I'll share it with Hal. And again, we're here to answer your questions from the concept level. So then you have the 2 swales here. You have a swale to the south and to the north. And the reason of that is because we want to make sure that we maintain the roadway, the existing width. And I believe right here, we're looking at more of a crown section, correct, Hal?
That's correct. And the larger basin is to the north, and that's why it's a larger swell. There is a smaller basin on the south, so we're going to keep them separate in this area, and that's why we have swales on both sides, but we're going to maintain that existing road width like you spoke about.
Yeah. So when we talk about crowning and inverted crowns and stuff like that, crowning is pretty much just making sure that you have it like this so this water can go down both sides. When we do the 2% pitch, it's going this way, so it goes one way into the swale system that we're creating. So again, by maintaining these dirt roadways, we're doing the crown system so the swale goes on either side.
And oftentimes the crown system is preferred because then you have swales on both sides. So we do those where we can, and where we cannot is where we're proposing a swale only on one side to be as least intrusive as possible.
Yeah. All right, and then also when you look over here, again, it says the 14 feet, which again, hopefully design will be able to reduce that. If we're not able to reduce it, and there's possibilities for piping and so forth, we can take a look at that as well. But here again, it shows you have the crown system. So you're going to have swales on either side. And then ultimately we get into this retention pond and it would be a rain garden. So it's not going to be a wet retention. It's going to be something that looks like this vegetated swale system here. And then when we get up here on going north on East Ave, our intent is to make sure that we try to see if we can do some vegetated swales. But this right here is taking into account the removal of the pine trees. And again, the reason that we're looking at the removal of the pine trees was to not only make sure that we're not impacting the residents that live to the west of East Boulevard, but those pine trees really aren't placed in the appropriate location. In addition, we've had an arborist take a look at those trees. They're in declining and not in the greatest health. And so we're looking at not only removing those trees, but planting more appropriate trees, probably, closer to the actual lake bed, whether it be cypress, other oaks, places where it's not going to be impacted by future projects. And again, one of the adults is going to be to figure out, okay, which side of the road would we do the water utility as well. So that's something that if the council wants to proceed with planning and designing the water utility, they can do that at that time. Going next one. Going further north, again, it shows the removal of the pine trees. Again, we've had an arborist take a look at that. And, you know, they're either in poor or declining health. And we would go ahead and replant. We wouldn't replant like kind. We would, again, use cypress and other types of vegetation that the tree board recommends for this area. But pretty much East Boulevard stays the exact same width that it is today. All we're doing is adding that 3-foot shoulder. And that's for safety reasons. And when you look at this retention area over here, we're going to be cleaning that up, cleaning this area up here as well. You know, there's a lot of vegetation. There's a lot of sightline issues that we have. And you can see, I think they're planning for the water line or the stormwater line to come down along where you pretty much have existing piping right now. And one thing I didn't say at the last one was that no matter what we do, that tree that's, I believe, right here is going to be impacted. Our certified arborist took a look at that, and the health of that tree is in decline. And we'll make sure that the arborist report is available to the residents and to elected officials as well. And the way that we select an arborist is we look to the tree board to make a recommendation, and we utilize that person as our person that will take a look at the trees. So there's no appearance of impropriety or conflict saying, okay, well, Robert just wants to take these trees down, just take these trees down. That's completely opposite of what our intent is. We want to make sure that we protect as many trees as possible. And if we can't, what do we replace it with? As you see, as you further go down to the east on 8th, when we look at the IPOs are going to take a look at more upstream as well to see if anything needs to change over there. Right now, there's a structure that's over here that dumps into this retention area, and then there's an overflow, as well as a swale system, a deep swale system over here by the Nix property. And here's where we get to Joe's property right here. You know, it's pretty pinch tight, but we're going to have to make it work. Again, we're utilizing what's existing. And then what we'll have to do is probably swing it out a little wider. Right now, it's showing that that tree isn't going to be impacted, but I still believe that what kind of tree was it? Was it a...
It was a maple tree, Robert. I agree. I think that we'll likely end up removing it if everybody thinks that's appropriate.
Yeah, so we'll be looking at removing that maple tree and then planting again something that's more appropriate, probably somewhere in this area.
And Robert, that was on the arborist report that said that, you know, to remove the roadway off of a personal property if that tree got impacted. His suggestion was to remove it and then plant like kind or plant something else. So. Yeah,
and we've been working with the tree board as well. I know Susan Carter has been on some walkthroughs. She's been on a lot of the Zoom meetings. So we're very, very conscious of the tree canopy, and we want to make sure that we maintain as many trees as possible. And again, when you look over here on the east side, you're going to have the swale systems with the impact on some of these oak trees that are over here, which continue on. But again, we're reducing the footprint by maintaining the exact width of the roadway as it is right now. And here's where you're going to see that slope from the west to the east. Looks weird because looks like you're pointing north to south, but it's going to be east or west to east. And you can see why we do it when you look at these slides. The PowerPoint is actually part of the agenda packet with these new updated concepts. But you can see, again, based on these slopes that you see here on, you know, the pitch that we're having to deal with. So again, just to quickly sum up before we get into a lot of the questions, the reason that these IPOs have changed over the last several months is because, you know, again, we're looking at first establishing a concept that would work not only with, you know, some of the dirt roads in town, but trying to come up with a concept that we can utilize to use in other areas to make sure that we come up with an easier maintenance program. When we came back with some of those concepts. The council directed us to go ahead and maintain our roadways, but to do it, within the existing right-of-ways. We came back with concepts that showed us utilizing the entire right-of-way wasn't the best thing, so we reduced it to the minimal amount of impacts that we could while maintaining Green Book standards. So we came back with those concepts, and then town council said, listen, we don't want to maintain anybody else's standards. We want to maintain our own standards. We don't want strings attached to these grants. If we're going to receive grants, we want our roads to look and feel like the way that we want them designed to look and feel like. So that's what these IPOs are asking. We tell the engineers how we want them to look like, how we can work out the stormwater issues. And then if the grants come in, so be it. If not, then we can still utilize those designs to self-fund these projects if and when we have those funds available. We'll definitely take care of those issues first that have flooding issues, like Animes, the Willards, some of the other areas that we've discussed. And then also, looking at the basin area, you have the Fries that are south of 9th and Oakdale. We're going to try to take care of them as well. So I believe it's everything that everybody's asked for. We have those different thresholds between 45 and 100%. So, you're getting closer and closer, and then we're going to continue to have these meetings where we can talk to each individual property owner and say, listen, okay, that swale that's in front of your yard, these are the options that we can do. We can be, 9 foot based on our hydraulics, or it could be, we can do piping or something else. But we're here to work for you. We've listened, we've amended, and sorry, it seems like there's a lot of confusion throughout this whole process. But again, working for our local government, and you can see it in the feds too, is that we're bound by different rules, and we're pretty much handcuffed to what we can say and what we can't say, and based on the timeframes that we have. So we try to be as transparent as possible. And I think the council made the right decision by tabling it. So they can further discuss it with the actual IPOs in front of them without us coming, creating one without them seeing with final approval. And with that said, we can get back to the culvert on the intersection of, hold on one second. Let me get back to some of these questions. I'm sorry. Brandy, we'll get back to yours, and I'll share the screen with Hal. How do you have the screen up?
Yes, I can share right now once you enable me to share.
Okay, let me get some of these. One-way road still on the table. We're still maintaining the 9-foot width. It's up to town council to make that decision of whether they want that to be a one-way. We would utilize traffic engineers to see how it would impact the actual flow of traffic, if it would reduce traffic one way or the other. But I can tell you, once you change traffic patterns, you're going to have a lot more people at those council meetings or on these Zoom meetings. So we tried to maintain your daily lives as much as possible without a lot of impacts. But the minute you start impacting everybody's day-to-day routine, that's when we start getting a lot of blowback. I'm the neighbor of Joe. It's scary. Understand, but with the concepts, again, it shows a lot of impacts, but we're trying to do what we can to reduce those impacts. But these are necessary in order for us to make sure that we not only take care of the stormwater off the roadway, but we also protect our lakes. Change is always scary. Change is a 4-letter word in the town of Windermere. It always has been. But know that we're doing this for the right reasons. We're not just doing it to do it. Robert's tough, but is there a net benefit estimate of reduction of runoff? This question will be from Hal. Is there a net benefit for the reduction of runoff into the lakes? This may example is how much runoff are we sending into the lakes versus what's going to be after the lakes. I can guarantee you, whatever we put into place now is going to have a better net impact than what's there right now. Any improvements that we do show, water quality, by implementing best management practices. And we've had the discussion with not only FEMA or DEM, but also with South Florida Water Management District. We include them with our, our permits, and we were on a consent order for our NPDES, which is National Pollution Effluent Discharge System. Right, thank you. So when I say NPDES, understand this, is that a lot of other jurisdictions, once you hit a certain population threshold, then you have to make sure that you're meeting NPDES. We are a population of 3,000, we're about 2.2 square miles. We are held to a different standard than the majority of municipalities in the state of Florida because we are surrounded by those lakes, because we ultimately discharge our stormwater into those lakes. So we are under a mic or a telescope when it comes to us and these projects, because they are outstanding Florida water bodies. Anything we do is under a microscope, and we have to make sure that we're doing everything to a T. So yes, the amount of money that's going to be spent on these is going to be well spent because it's going to enhance the water quality of those lakes. Is the Butler Chain of Lakes monitoring position offer funding from our taxpayers? Yeah, we're actually Councilmember Ander and I think Bill Martini made the last meeting. We've been working with them. We've actually included them on our projects meetings to try to come up with funding, because if you're a Windermere resident, you're paying an MST, which is a municipal service taxing unit. So that means everybody in that area is being assessed a certain amount of money, and that money goes to the Butler Chain of Lakes Advisory Committee, and they make recommendations of how to spend that money. I think it's about a little over $2 million a year that they receive. And we are working with them on some of these projects and also on educational programs for people on how to protect our lakes. The heavy rain will be closed to 14 feet of my house, and I've already 1 inch in my living room. Imagine a swell full of water. My house is under the level of the swell. I'm not 100% sure what that is from iPad Air David, but right now, yeah. Right now, again, everybody's responsible for their 1 inch of rainfall coming off of their properties. Anything above and beyond that, then, we try to include that within our plan. We do have Brad Cornelius with Wade Trim, making sure that, the homes that are currently under construction or homes that have been constructed are still maintaining their stormwater systems. But anything over that 1 inch, we have to take into account. One of the reasons that, again, we looked at amending the Butler plan that we saw up here is that, we have existing piping that's underneath, and people might say, well, why did you move the swale system from the north to, or from the east to the west? Well, the reason for that is, again, if you look at a lot of these homes, their septic systems are in their front yards. When the properties that are to the west, they have, long yards, their homes are closer to the lakes. So the perceived impact to their properties will not only be less, but, we're not going to have negative impacts to people's stormwater or septic systems or their well systems. So we want to make sure that it's very clear. We want to make sure that, when we found out there was a lot of septic systems over here, we want to make sure that we pushed it away from those septic systems as much as possible. I believe the Butler Association has about $19 million in reserves. Can we check on that? Absolutely. I think it's actually more than that they have in reserves, but we've used them in the past on getting filter baskets. We've used them on cleaning up the area in front of the 6th Avenue boat ramp. I do believe we have a really good working relationship with them. We actually have residents that used to sit on that board. And we have a very active role now with elected officials actually being liaisons to that board. So we're definitely going to be in negotiations and discussions with them to help us out with offsetting some of these costs. So yeah, and if you open up your chat box, you can see, Mr. Martini's statements about how they're working with us and how they're helping us. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Hal so we can answer Brandy's question, and then we'll just open up the floor to everybody.
Hey, Robert, Anna Mae had a question as well. that we didn't answer in that chat box.
Okay, what was her question?
I have to open the chat box back up. She said,
Okay, man.
I have some questions about the Butler Basin, so she might just need to have a question.
Okay, so
Just want to give her an opportunity.
all right, go ahead, Hal. If you can pull those two basins up, and then we'll get to Brandy's question first, and then we'll move it over to Anna Mae.
Sure. And I do apologize, that exhibit that was previously included in the package had inadvertently had the cross drains and inlets turned off. But as you can see, we are designing an interconnected swale system. So there will be a side drain that goes from Oakdale to the swale on the east side of Oakdale shown here.
Does that answer your question, Brandy, or you have anything else? You can unmute and ask more questions if you want.
So what is the swale that's crossing the street near my driveway? I'm sorry, the culvert.
This here?
No, the other one that's crossing the road.
This one here that you're speaking of?
Yeah.
Right, so there is a smaller basin that goes towards the road, and like I said, in this area, because we're leaving the existing roadway width alone, there is clear space to have swales on both sides of the road. So that's just meant to interconnect the swales so that it goes up to here, it pipes through here. So it's just a way to interconnect the cells with the south side to the north side, because over here we have some power pole and some other conflicts that we couldn't connect the pipe over here. So really, our pipe locations are based upon minimizing tree impacts and utility impacts.
Okay, well, what about the private pole that you guys talked about that's supposedly on our property and the Bardos? We have a utility pole.
Well, there's the two that I'm aware of are these two. Are these the ones you're speaking of, or are you talking about a different one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which little symbol is supposed to represent the pole. Is it just where the yellow hat cross lines match?
Yeah.
Hey, Brandy,
so
one of the hey, Hal, let me just jump in there because
sure, and
I was
just
out there with
so
Brandy.
these are the two power poles that I'm aware of that are within the right of way.
Right, but the whole idea is to not effectuate that and burden the residents by relocating those power poles so we can shift the swales around those. In addition to that, we didn't want to burden with the existing well structure. So I think what we're planning on doing is trying to monitor and adjust the swales appropriately so that we're not burdening you guys with the relocation of a power pole, while at the same time also burdening you guys with the relocation of a well that's in the right of way. So the whole idea is for us to work the swales around those two pieces that don't burden you guys.
And we'll be working with Duke as well. We'll make sure that they're aware. We have direct contacts with their government relations people. So if there is going to be an impact, we'll make sure that, they know about it and also you guys know about it. And if we come to some sort of agreement of where that pole needs to be relocated, we'll try to do it.
I mean, one thing we're still not even clear on is why it's being referred to as a private pole, because it goes the entire length of the block all the way to 8th Street and our backyards. That's where all of our neighbors get service from.
Yeah, and we'll clarify that. Typically, when you see one line coming across the street and then to one pole as an endpoint, it looks like a single service line. So we can have Duke confirm whether it's a single service line or if it's an actual a trunk line where it's interconnected with all the other ones.
I think the plan is, Brandy, is to not burden you guys with that cost. It's like if we can get Duke to relocate it, or if it doesn't have to be and can be incorporated into design, that's the ideal scenario. So we don't have to deal with Duke nor deal with any impact to the residents.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only other thing I would say in general is, because we have not had any explanation that I know my well wasn't part of the survey, but I don't even know from looking at this if it's in the swale or not in the swale. But at least everywhere else, it seems like you guys have shrunken things where you can, and yet still by our house, it's still 14 foot and now it's across the street too. I understand what Hal Chow is saying about the basin being bigger to the north side of the street versus the south side of the street. But I also know that their drawings that they showed at the previous charrette or workshop, I don't remember which one it was presented at now, they're all a blur, but that the water was running at a diagonal from the northwest corner of our block to the southeast corner of our block, not straight down north to south. So, I mean, is that water supposed to be catching stuff coming off of our block, or is it supposed to just be conveying the water that's coming from across the street on the west side?
The answer is both, Brandy. So if you look at this drainage map here, you have about 1.82 acres going down Oakdale, which were going to be captured with the existing swales that we're going to slightly modify as needed. There's also a 1.41 acre basin here. So when you add those two together, you get about 3.23 acres. So that goes through the cross drain and it goes into the swell that you're speaking about here. Now this 3.32 acre basin generally flows towards this direction, which would be the to the southeast. But some of it will get into those swells as well. But you're right, it doesn't not all of it directly goes into that swell. But we're conveying this 3.23 acres, as well as maybe about an acre or so going into that area with those swells there. And we're gonna do extensive hydraulic calculations when we get to the design phase, and you're free to review those. But we'll size those swells to meet the requirements of the drainage basins going to them.
Right. Well, my other concern is, which I know it was brought to your attention this week, Robert, is that the south side of my street on 9th Street has been changed and altered by neighbors. So that existing road is no longer the existing road width.
Are you talking directly across the street from you?
On 9th, yes. At the property
Yeah.
on the southeast corner. The city's dirt edge of the road, if that's what you want to call it, has now shifted probably 5 feet to the south because of removal of sod.
Well, whoever's removing that sod out there, it's not us. I know that Councilmember Martini texted me pictures this morning. I first thought it was just somebody putting in spray paint to try to locate what the potential impacts would be. But I've talked to Brad and I've talked to our public works department, and whatever's being done out there isn't through us. And then Brad's going to be checking on, okay, what are they actually doing out there?
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not in town at the moment, but before I was leaving town, I noticed some changes going on. We weren't sure who was doing it at first either, but then we did finally witness who was doing it. So, but it's, 5 or 6 feet of grass removed and turning it into the road again.
Yeah, no, I was just notified of that today. We'll do what we can to take care of it.
Well, I would still, none of our trees are marked. I see all the other trees are marked. I don't, unless that's what those are I can't see it. Maybe it's underneath the black thing there. But, my other concern is that where our well is, and, when you do 14 foot and 3 foot with our measurements we did out there in person with John and Chris Sapp, that put it right on our property line. So is the black hard line of the road, that's supposed to be the actual road edge right now?
Yes, the hard line, the black, is the existing edge of dirt road at the time of survey, and this was surveyed about a year ago. And the dimension is consistent with what we measured out in the field. So this is the edge of the dirt road right here, that hard black line.
Okay, well, I don't know if the graders changed anything, but.
Hey, Brandy, based on our meeting and like looking at where your well is and also where the pole is, I think we can work the swales around both of those so it's not an impedance on you guys. So I think the well's good based on where we are right now, looking at how do we keep the dirt roads. So as an outcropping from our meeting, I think we're going to be in good shape with both the well and the power pole.
Is the road, are you guys still shifting the road?
No.
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 So as Robert stated, this is no longer a road project. This is a drainage improvement project. We are going to design to mitigate the drainage that's out there. and to properly convey and properly store the drainage out there. We are only going to regrade the road, the cross slopes as needed to have it discharge into the swales, but we are not moving the dirt road or widening the dirt roads at all. The only exception is around the curve where the dirt road is actually a part of its on private property. That's the only place where we're moving the dirt road.
Yeah, that's Joe's area.
Yeah.
And as an adult too, and which has been discussed in the past, is to tee up that intersection at East and 9th. That's up to town council whether they want to move forward with that. Because that was raised as a concern, as far as people using it as a cut through and creating a throughway stop there. So we're gonna, it's up to council if they want us to proceed with that. It actually shows the exact cost that it would take in order for us to put that in there.
All right. I mean, our only comment is, yes, obviously we're concerned about the well and the utility pole, but I've just seen it shrink everywhere else. I think we'd like to see the same thing on our neck of the woods, and it went from not shrinking to 9 feet on the other side. So
We'll do our best.
We'll look into
We're
it.
working with you.
All right. How can we move over to Butler? I think Anna Mae Clance has a couple questions.
Sure.
Hi, everybody.
Anna Mae.
First of all, I want to preface this by saying that I appreciate all the efforts to solve this problem. And I want to be a team player. I have some questions. This new drawing is completely different from what was proposed before. And I think there was one explanation about avoiding some septic tanks. Is that right? Drainage or...
Sure. The part that was changed to avoid the septic tanks was this property right here. We did have a swale in this area, but after addressing that concern, and because this is kind of not the bottom of the basin, it's more towards the top of the basin, we went ahead and extended the shoulder gutter here, Anna Mae, and we went ahead and piped it through here. That's the portion that's changed from a swale system to a pipe system.
Okay. I just have a question because I know my neighbors did not want to swale in their yard and suggested it go on my side, and I see it's on my side now. And I'm not contesting that. That is town property, and I want to trust what you're doing. So yeah, I'm surprised to see this pretty radical change. So I see the swale that is on the right of way that borders my property. Does anyone know where my well is?
I don't. And again, same thing with Brandy, if you have documents that show us, or your Department of Health permit or a sketch description would probably have been submitted for that. We would love to see that. But
yeah, I can show you where it is. What I would like to do is request a meeting. I've seen Kimley Horn. I've seen the town out meeting with some of my neighbors, and I have not had that opportunity as well.
Absolutely.
So I would request that you come and talk to me. I'll show you where my well is. I will be happy to show you, what my drainage concerns are, my stormwater concerns. And then maybe, so we don't take up time during this meeting, is you can fully explain to me this new system and how it would work. And again, I just want to say, I want to be a team player here, but I don't want things all changed up because somebody else complained. I want to make sure this plan will work for everybody. So if you'd like to set that up, I'd really appreciate that.
Definitely. We'll set that up. And then Anna Mae, when I first saw the, reiteration of this, I'm like, oh, great. Somebody's going to say squeaky wheel gets grease, stuff like that. But
I am kind of saying that.
But I'm going to say, but that's not the case of why we did it. There's existing piping that's out there. And again, not only is that one property impacted with their septic system, but the neighboring property as well has their septic system in the front. So they're pretty much crunched in when it comes to the amount of property or perceived property that's in their front yard. You know, when you look to the west of, Butler, there's a lot more area to where it's not perceived, to be directly right in front because your homes are pushed back so far. But we're trying to be as equal and fair as possible, and we'll definitely set up that meeting with you and do a walkthrough.
Because I've seen everyone out there, and I have not come out, but I would like to be afforded that same courtesy to talk to me and to ask me what my concerns are, where my well is, because it's up in that area. So yeah, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually when we try to do a walkthrough and it's just me and John or Hal, then everybody starts joining us. So
yeah, and I saw you out there one day, and I was, I decided
it's a party. I saw you coming in the other day when I was out there.
Yeah, right. You had to move up for me, and I'm just trying to I've tried to be courteous. I've tried to be a team player, but at the same time, I want to squeak my wheel if I need to, just to get this done right, for not only for me, but for everybody in our area, and also for our lake. I think we've got some concerns with our lake, with runoff. I've been swimming lately, and I can tell you the weeds in the lake are unprecedented. So I want to protect our lakes as well.
that's another thing that we'll work with the Butler Shannon Lakes Advisory Committee, because once we hit that normal high water elevation, that's the county and the state's responsibility. So what we see, we can let them know. But we'll be more than happy to meet you on site, not only for this project, but also, with Parks and Recreation working on their boardwalk. We want to make sure that everybody's involved in that process as well through these Zoom meetings, because they're very informal. But people can actually, see these on YouTube. They can go ahead and email me. But we want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible.
Perfect. So yeah, just let me know when you have time. I'm pretty much a captive audience these days, so I'll work around you.
Yeah, we know where you live now, so.
Yes, you do, unfortunately. Yeah. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Anime, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
We're opening this up to anybody. Again, we're here as long as you need us to be. I know it's a Monday night. I know there's the Bucks are playing tonight, but my daughter's at my mother-in-law, so please feel free. I'll give it a minute.
I just want to say one other comment. We did uncover our well, so it's visual. It's a little bit bizarre because it's underneath a sprinkler box. So we would have provided a survey had we had one, but we kind of found out it existed a year after we lived there. So it's not on any of our surveys. It's also outside the property line, therefore a standard survey wouldn't include it anyway. But we did uncover it so you guys can see it if someone needs to see where it's located. I'm not in town right at the moment, but we would also like to have a meeting too, with maybe some new spray paints with this new current design. Because when we're looking at it, it just seems like everything's shifted a little further than where our the road edge is on our property, based on what we've measured out there. So foot to ground versus what we're seeing on the drawings isn't quite matching up. So maybe some new spray painted lines.
Yeah, Brandy, we can do that. And I did see where your well is, when you and I were out there with
Right.
Councilman Sapp. So, and I believe that, it's close enough to the right of way and close enough to your property line that it will not be affected at all by what we're trying to do with the swales. And even if we have to bump the swales in around it to keep the well there, I don't see that being a problem. If it was out closer to the dirt road, could be potentially a problem, but where it was, based on what we're talking about, I think we're going to be good.
Okay.
Well, I guess
Anybody else?
Yeah, me.
Hey,
Can you
Tom.
hear me okay?
Yep.
I've been in county government for 32 years, so I know the processes can be. I guess you could say that a lot of things can happen without the people knowing, And I've seen a lot of things in this town happen, and we do know. And I really want to reach out and say thank everybody for listening. I met with every single town council person at least twice. I met with Robert probably half a dozen times, and John probably 2-3 times a week lately. And you guys listened, and not that it has to be all about me, but I think a lot of this change came because you listened to not just me, but to 130 or 40 other people signed a petition asking for you to listen also. I've seen it happen not with just this, but other things in town that people have spoke out about. Some things I have got what I thought were the best things, some things I haven't. So for me, I just want to say thank everybody for listening. I don't know where we're going to end up with this ultimately, but this is the only place I know that any government organization I've been involved with where people have listened this much, regardless of whether I get what I want or don't get what I want. This is the way the process is supposed to be done. And I just want to say, everybody, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Robert, I want to echo Tom's comments. You guys doing a great job trying to accommodate everybody and rework the designs, which leads me to question about if FEMA denies our plans or turns down the funding for these particular plans, are we on the hook for the design work, or will the grant money still pay for that?
No, we're on the hook for the design work.
Okay. And then on the Bessie side, where the curbing is in front of Joe's house, there's curbing across the street from where kind of follows the line of Joe's new fence, but across the street there's curbing. Would that have to be removed in order to expand that corner like we were talking about?
Yes, the existing curbing and the existing inlets would have to be removed to establish the new curb line and the new inlets.
Okay, so we'd be putting new curbing in just further out.
Correct.
Okay, how much further out would it go? How? Approximately.
Yeah, approximately. So this is 14 feet here, which is the existing road is 13 feet right here. So just approximately, I would say maybe about 4 or 5 feet.
Okay. I was driving down there today trying to figure out, where that would be. So, all right, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, if you see that the canopy for the, we're kind of almost where the maple tree is.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
I would encourage everybody to spread the word too. There's another one of these meetings tomorrow evening, and then also on December 3rd. And so I would like to see, as many people as possible on here. So if you're listening, please share with your neighbors that we'll be doing this again tomorrow and also December 3rd, so we can get, as many people on and as much input as possible.
I have a follow-up comment about that curbing. Robert probably knows where I'm going. I live, this is Martin Collins. I live right up next to Joe. But that drainage that's currently in there is either designed wrong or installed wrong, because it shunts out the runoff basin on the corner. When that basin gets too full, it does not hit the overflow for that stormwater basin. It backs up and goes back down that pipe, that existing pipe, and exits in from the drain in front of Joe's house, because that drain is lower than the outfall of the retention basin. So my assumption is that you will remove that curb and repair that work that Windermere put in incorrectly on the last refurbishment. Is that correct, Robert?
Well, how you can respond to that?
Yeah, that is correct. We are going to be replacing those inlets in that storm sewer system. So you do have positive drainage going towards that retention area on 8th and East. And also, so there'll be new curbing, new inlets, new pipe, and they'll be at the proper elevation to make that work. So it won't back up.
That's all.
Thank you, Marlon. Question as to these concepts and then the IPOs, they are part of the agenda packet that's on the 8th. But again, we don't want you guys thumbing through an entire agenda just to find these. So we'll post those individually. with a link to this video. So again, you can send it to your neighbors and friends. I know a lot of people are traveling for Thanksgiving, but we just want to make sure that you guys get the information and you're always up to date. And if this should be approved, again, it's not like, okay, that's it, you're done with your comments and your input. We'll be going back to council with 45% design, but from the approval of the IPO to the 45%, we're going to be meeting with everybody, doing these Zoom meetings, in-person meetings, and then also subsequent to that 45% to get to the 100%, we'll be doing the same thing. So, you know, we want to make sure that we do this once and we do it right. So with that said, thank you all for taking your Monday night. I really appreciate it. John's going to be running the meeting tomorrow night. I have to pick up some people. So I really appreciate everybody's input. Again, we're here to work for you. We're here not to work against you. So, you know, we'll compromise where we can. We'll design something hopefully that, you know, most, if not everybody is going to be in favor of. And with that said, I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Be safe and be smart. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Hey, Robert, before you head out, Anna Mae, do you have time Wednesday morning to meet? Because I don't have your contact information, so
Yes, I do.
I could.
Yep.
Yeah, that would work.
I'm gonna stop recording before she announces her phone number to everybody in the.
Yeah, no, that's not a good thing. So if you want to meet, like.